Hello everyone, we should be live now. If anybody wants to join this Hangout, I've posted the link in the IRC channel. It should also be on the summit.ubuntu.com page. Please feel free to join the Hangout, but we'll also be watching IRC. So the purpose of this meeting is to figure out what we can do to support app developers who are currently writing apps for other platforms and help them to move over to writing apps for the Ubuntu platform. This is something that we've talked about on and on for a while. We've looked at different options. I know we've looked at code conversions. There are different companies that have offered that, but it was expensive and not reliable. We've looked at supporting native binaries being run under like a VM or emulation or something, and that's not a good solution either because of resources and also because you only get what the emulated platform offers. This is something that some others like Yola have done. They can run Android apps as Android apps, but then they don't look and feel like Yola apps, access all the new features. And then I took a different approach. A few months back I started writing a script that would convert some of the high-level parts of an Android app over into QML to act as a scaffolding for building a native Ubuntu app based on an upstream source. And I think that's going to be our best bet, is to just provide a nice, easy route for people to go from writing an Android app to writing the same app as a native Ubuntu app. And we've got a couple different approaches that we can use to this. We've got the script approach, which was what I was working on, which can get us maybe 80% of the way there and no further. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be a one-click solution for an app. And also we can provide documentation so that people who are already familiar with Android apps can read up on the differences and how to map concepts and structures between Android code and Ubuntu code. So to start things off, I wanted to talk about the scripts that I wrote. Originally, they were command line scripts, but Qt Creator has the ability to run templates. So I'm converting my script to one of those, to where you would have a template type in Qt Creator when you go to start a new project that says import from Android source. And so you click on that, it would pop up a dialog asking you where the Android source was. You pointed at that, and then it would run the conversion and create you a new project. I think something like that would be good to bring in as part of the default SDK or an add-on package to the SDK. And we can expand that to cover multiple different source projects, not just Android. We can have it look at iOS sources, Firefox OS sources, that kind of thing. Benjamin,
iOS sources will hurt. You don't want to parse Objective-C code, to be honest.
Right. So I wasn't.
Might be, but the Objective-C is quite tough. I would rather have something that the Objective-C code is compiled, used as an engine from QML. But still needs to. The Objective-C is a bit different world than the Android itself. Silverlight, it's a different story because that's basically XML, so you can transfer that one into QML easier.
Do iOS apps use a separate UI structure? Because I wasn't actually parsing Java code for my Android one. I was looking at their XML layout files.
As far as I know, that they don't have anything like that in OS X. Everything is with the word Cocoa and or stuff, anything like that is anything else, just like a bunch of interfaces or a bunch of objects that you are actually using, like in Objective-C.
Okay. So yeah, iOS might give us a little bit of different options just because they do use compiled native. And literally, I don't think whatever solutions we come up with has to be 100%. I don't even think it necessarily has to be 80%. All it has to do is give a really good starting point and take away the pain of getting over that initial hump. So
Yeah,
if we can offer just that much to other app developers, it would at least give them some incentive to start work on a native Ubuntu port.
I think yeah, iOS is one thing, but I think the ones who were actually made for Windows Phone, converting something out from Silverlight is, I think it's as it would be as close as your script, which does the Android stuff. It parses the Android stuff.
Okay.
I was going to ask if we covered Android well, I mean, is it even worth trying to do something for every platform?
I think it depends. As Jean-Paul said, if Windows Phone is easy to do, then it's probably worth doing. Firefox OS apps are probably going to be worth doing just because there's so little work have to be done to make them work in Ubuntu. So I think a combination of how hard is it to do and what's the benefit of doing it will determine whether or not we should.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a number of interesting apps that we could get that way, then it obviously makes more sense. I guess I'm just thinking I'd like to do a good job on one important one, then try to scatter across all of them. But I guess we can figure that out as we go.
I think in terms of priority, Android would be on top.
Definitely.
That would give us the most source apps that we can use it on.
Yep.
In addition to some sort of tool to get people started, generally there's documentation that compares the APIs in some interesting way. I don't think we've taken any steps to do that. Is that something else that's also on your list, Michael?
Yeah, that's something that we would need for documentation. I don't know where we... Do you know where we can get a definitive list of Android APIs, at least?
Yeah, so if you go to developer.android.com, you have... Actually, you have 3 sections that are interesting. So the third one is a reference one, so I can pass on IRC. And this is a complete Android API per API level as well. So we can filter and see, what is available as well on the compatibility library if you are targeting an older API. And there are 2 other sections that I think are really important. If you look at the tabs, the one on the left is the training one. The training one is giving you some tutorials, step by step, to build some applications based on target. So for instance, the first tutorial is just building a simple application. Then you add screen size, for instance, to that same application. Then you manage the life cycle of this application and so on. And so you have that per topic. So you have, like getting started, content sharing, adding multimedia support, graphics and animation, and so on. And so those are very high-level tutorials. Next to that, you have the API guide, which is a little bit misleading. This is not the full Android API, but actually it's diving very deep into one section. So for instance, if you go to user interface, then you have everything about, all the elements, overview, layouts, input controls, menu, and so on. And so this is not just a description of the API, this is concrete example of best practice. So if you go to the network, for instance, they explain you how to do caching, how to create a service then so that, you cache behind the scene, how to store it, to your local file system and so on. And this is really a deep dive per topic. And this is still, again, like a tutorial in some way, just way much more, let's say, involving you, in the technical details, showing you as well code that you can copy and paste and paste and totally, run that on your browser. So, and then, the third one is the first one I presented, which is a reference, which is, the complete Android API. And which version are deprecated, and if there is a deprecation, basically, which one to use instead. So I think, pairing those three sections and having some kind of porting guide as part of the training one would be really compelling to new developers as well to people who want to port, an application to our SDK.
So we already have, we're starting to build up our own list of guides on Portal. Do you think we should have guides that specifically walk you through porting components? So like we would have a set of guides under porting where it would say, okay, here's how you convert your animated widgets between Android and Ubuntu.
Yeah, we can maybe, take some example applications and then, first maybe run your tool so that there is a basic templates and then say, going step by step on then I that part and this is how we do it in Ubuntu. So doing that for, music, well, all the streaming and so on, network, maybe database access or, like topic per topic I think is really important and is really compelling. And again, the applications that we take as an example, even on Android side, can be a very dummy application. Just something targeting on one aspect, and then so that people can really easily, now I want to work on, downloading some JSON file from the internet and seeing that up, regularly. This is the example you did on Android. This is how you convert it, to Ubuntu Touch.
What other documentation do you think an Android developer is going to need besides the API comparison and these guides?
So there is the Android design guideline. I think that they are really well written and very comprehensive. Maybe as well, being able to translate, their guidelines about, well, material design now to Ubuntu Touch design could be interesting. Maybe we can involve, the design team to it, especially with all the new interaction. Like we have the pager component and, those kind of SDK way of managing activities. Which are really different to Android activities and fragments. But again, I will do as they are doing for their topics. So for their API guides, topic by topic, taking one application, being multi-page, well, multiple activity rather on Android, and then, translating that to Ubuntu Touch. And so we can cover the design at the same time that way.
And these, are there guides for these like activity patterns in the links that you provided?
Yeah, so if you want actually the activity one, first there is, well, there is one on the starting guidelines that I can on IRC, which explain, the activity.
I'm not a developer, so I don't know what the common patterns are or the recommended patterns.
As for the design one, in particular?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have here, exactly. So material design one, which has just been refreshed recently with Android 5.0. And then if you, let me check, you have the style. They changed a little bit, so but you have patterns, exactly. That was the one I was looking for. So the last one, design patterns. And you have everything like, the gestures that should be used, the navigation, how the action bar should be set, And so now, and we have something, very similar on Ubuntu Touch. But if you take the action bar, for instance, it would be nice, I guess, to have that translating. This is how you did it, on design-wise on Android. This is how we think, you should do it to integrate well on Ubuntu Touch. Oh, sorry. So something which is really nice on Android is that there is some tools, to generate icons and, like using the default icon set. So those are copied into the application, actually. But you can generate on patterns, and then you just change slightly the colors, and it will give you a new set, with the new colors, just to match to your application. Do we have something like that for Ubuntu Touch? Or do we want, only using system icons?
I think we have a way to color the system icons on the fly. I'm not sure on that. John Borg, can you comment on that?
Sorry, guys. Am I muted? No. Sorry,
No.
guys. I wasn't. I was checking the logs here. Could you repeat the question once?
So we were talking about icons, and Didier mentioned that there's a tool in Android to be able to copy and change the color of system icons to use in your app if you're using a different color scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that we had a way of doing that on the fly at runtime.
Right. Runtime. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we can say, okay, I want to use this icon, but it's going to be on a blue background, so make it dark blue instead of gray.
Right. You can do that.
Okay. Do we have a guide for that online somewhere, or is this something that happens without the developer having to do anything?
No, it doesn't happen. I think we do have only on the API documentation, like how you can color the icons, but nothing fancy. Nothing else, at least nowhere else.
Okay.
But I think if you want to have something like that, it would be wise to have in the porting guide. So if you want to color it differently.
Yeah, at least mention, if you were going to be doing it this way in Android, here's how you would do it for an Ubuntu app. And we can even, at that point them to the API docs for specific details on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the main concept to explain is that, the activity XML file now is a QML file, how to translate from activity basically to pages, and how to translate from fragments, to our responsive design pattern. I think those are the two main things, and the third one is the equivalent of intents, of Android intents, like using Upstart approach and how to invoke a service or another application. I think those are the three main concepts that needs to be explained first, and with that we will cover most of the cases.
On a kind of a different topic, do you think that there's any barrier in terms of the IDE, or is that kind of a non-issue for most developers?
Mice can move from one IDE to an IDE for what they're developing is better than trying to have them use the same IDE. So my personal opinion is that we should get Android developers to use the Ubuntu SDK and Qt Creator to write Ubuntu apps.
Right, and it's not just about Android porters. So if you think that someone is having an iOS application and wants to port to Ubuntu, we cannot provide any plugins to Xcode, right? So you cannot at the moment. The only way you can develop for Ubuntu is to run it from Ubuntu and using from Qt SDK. If we do provide the same setup, like as a creator bundle, so it can be installed as a plugin or as an attachment to the Qt creator, just like Yola and BlackBerry is providing, that would be even better. In that case, we could support even development from Mac and even development from Android.
Yeah, I think we're going to be hampered a little bit getting people to start porting apps as long as you have to be running an Ubuntu host to run the SDK.
Right. So in that sense, it would be the move to completely provide the Ubuntu SDK or Ubuntu Touch SDK as part of Qt Creator's big family. It would be wiser.
Which I know we've talked about, and we're
Yep.
So it'll come eventually. I don't think we should wait on getting this other porting work done on that, though.
No, that's true.
All right, so going past documentation now, in terms of the actual tools, the one I have is a hacked together Python script, and it does the job to an extent, but it's not real nice code. And I personally wouldn't have time to dedicate to a full rewrite of it. I could help with a rewrite, but it would have to be more than just me to actually get the code working to a level of quality that it would need to be to ship as part of the SDK. So do we have any resources that can work on that if we can make porting app support a priority?
That's a good question.
I was about to say that's a question to Pat.
Yeah. I don't know if I can answer it here, but it's certainly something we can factor into the planning.
Okay. Yeah, we would need somebody who's really good at Python and knows how to make a good maintainable set of Python code. Because if anyone looks at mine, you will know that that's probably not me. Could also really use somebody who knows Qt and QML and how to use it properly, because I was generating code that I would have written, but it's probably not the best way to do it in QML. So if we have an expert from the QML side that says, okay, how you should convert Android activities into pages to make them efficient and flexible in your Ubuntu app. The code to parse the Android resources is there and can probably be largely reused. And then, like I said, I've got a prototype template for Qt Creator that will let you import it that way, which works pretty well. I was impressed by how easy that was to do in Qt Creator. So, Pat, do you want to talk offline after UOS about developer resources would be then available?
Yeah, let's see what we could come up with. I know we can't start it just yet, but let's see what might be possible. It's probably not something we could ask. We could ask the community for help, but I don't know. I don't know how feasible that would be in this case.
We can ask people for help. I don't know of anyone in the community who would be able to take it on and drive it. So it may be a case of, you know, we need one person to drive it and organize it and act as tech lead for it. And then we get a bunch of other people who can help contribute to one part or another of it.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
So I'll take a work item to kind of flesh out a spec for this. So that we know how much time and man hours we're going to need. And then, Pat, I'll go over that with you. Is anybody on IRC listening to this that wants to chime in? And I'm really kind of a novice when it comes to both Android development and Ubuntu app development. So if anybody's got some input on better ways to do it or things that we need to consider that I haven't considered, please chime in with that. I know, Didier, you've mentioned a lot of things to look at from the Android side. Jean-Bor, is there anything from the QML side that I'm not thinking of that I should be?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Of course, as you said, that something that is generated, it is like serves as a basis of something, or like serves as a basis for your application, which is not going to be the best performant one. So you have to think all the bits and pieces how to organize that code in such a way that it is going to give you the best performance. But I don't think that there is anything else.
Okay.
You should think of.
Do we have anyone in Canonical who's got experience developing apps for both Android and Ubuntu? I think we have some in the core apps developers.
Didn't we have Ubuntu One client for Android? So at least those who made it.
Yeah, we should check in Martin's team.
I think it was Karnitsky or who actually was doing something for the Ubuntu One client.
Okay.
For Android.
Do any of them do Ubuntu app development now?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Mikhail Karnitsky, I think that's the name.
Oh, okay. Take a work item to talk to him then.
I think also, is it Francois? He may have some background there.
Hopefully one of them can help me put together a list of what documentation we need and what components we need to cover. The documentation could really be independent of the code part. So we can write it without necessarily referencing using a script to convert things. That way, if that doesn't happen or if that takes longer to happen, we would at least have the documentation. Do you think the documentation alone would be sufficient to let people start porting Android apps?
To be honest, I think it would be a good start. Just, even Google, they don't have a lot of samples, sample application, but they have the list on one tab. And even if we just start with that and say this is how you do it, one side and the other, I think that will be good enough. I'm afraid that having a converter is great, but I think not a lot of developers will trust the converter. So, if we give a manual way which is easy enough and well detailed, I think they will go that path.
Yeah, I must agree with Didier, because the thing is that converters are really nice, but they might actually provide some or produce some kind of big monster. I'm afraid. I'm at least me personally. I was always afraid of converters. I have seen generated names because they were. I mean, the target language was needing some kind of different naming or some other ways of specifying some IDs that were generated, and they were like big sausages there, and you got your hair up. So
Okay.
I'm not saying that your generator is something that we should throw, but it would at least gives the first hunt. But the problem is, the bigger the UI is, the bigger the generated code, and the unreadable the generated code might become. So.
Yeah. Also, I think like the biggest problem you would face if you just come from an Android world is how to do certain things in the Ubuntu platform. So basically, you need that documentation. Okay, this is the concept in Android, and this is how you do it in Ubuntu. It's what you need first to actually understand what the converter will give you. So I think that the documentation is even more important than providing the generator.
Okay.
Part of the issue is that, so in Android, you have all those specifiers around the XML. So how to explain that? Let's say you have, one file that you set in your layout, and you have different directories. So let's say you have the regular menu, but then you can have the menu dash 100 pixel screen, and the menu dash 200 pixel screen, and so on. And basically, the file overwrites per priority, and so you can get very complicated combination to know exactly what you need to render. Like the combination of all those files per device capacity, as well language, and everything basically is meltdown. This is how they support, for instance, localization as well. And this is the thing is that it was so complicated for the Android team to support that, for the tools team, basically, that for their IntelliJ version, for the Android Studio One, they gave up having their own parser. They are using the Android runtime itself now. They are totally in line, and they show, the right presentation. Because before they had their own implementation, which was different from the Android one on the tool side, and there was some discrepancy, of course. And I'm afraid that we will, fight against the same issues, basically, when trying to convert automatically. So I think that's why, even if we shouldn't, drop the idea at all or completely, we should at least, focus on the documentation.
Okay.
Do you think that David Calais interested in, working on this once he will have finished, his current work? Because he knows quite well the Ubuntu Touch side of things. I can help him at least, to bootstrap and to. I'm happy to giving examples on the Android side that I think will be good starting point.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. He's got quite a bit on his plate already, so I don't know when he might be done with his current work to work on this. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to keep him on when he's done with the scope stuff.
So if anyone, again, is happy while he's, on the Ubuntu Touch side from the SDK team, is happy to help writing this documentation. I'm happy to fill in, the Android side as a starting point and say, these are the cases that I think we should support, and even, to add some dummy applications that we can get as a starting point anyway.
Okay. So I've got a work item already to put together a spec document. So I'll do one for the documentation and one for the code when we get around to that. But for the documentation one, I'll share it with all you guys, and we can start putting in a list of topics to cover and links to the Android way of doing it and the QML way of doing it, so that we can start putting those docs together.
Yeah, that's fine, and I can, file some use case that I think should be valuable first. So yeah.
All right, that sounds good. I don't have any other topics to cover. I think I've got everything that I need to go forward on this. And the docs for this would ultimately be up on developer.ubuntu.com/apps somewhere. All right, and there's nothing on IRC, so we'll go ahead and wrap this up early.
Maybe
We all get a bit of a break.
just one thing. Maybe a separate topic for it would be wiser. Not /apps, but like something like porting guides or something like that.
Well, the porting guides would be specific to apps. Because at the top level, you've got apps, scopes, web integration.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right.
We have a general platform section under apps. So it would probably go under there. So it wouldn't be QML specific.
Mm-hmm. Yep, okay.
All right. Well, thanks guys for coming on, and I will be getting with you guys over the next few weeks to get this started.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.